Welcome to Untamed Blossoms, the podcast where we celebrate the untamed journey of womanhood. Here, we tell the stories of incredible women who have embraced their authenticity, inspiring others to do the same.
From entrepreneurs to artists, activists to adventurers, we share triumphs, challenges, and the beauty of self-discovery. These are the stories of women blazing their own trails, breaking free, and blooming unapologetically.
Join us to connect, be inspired, and celebrate the power of women's stories. Together, let's rewrite the rules and embrace our wildness.
Welcome to Untamed Blossoms. I'm your host, Amanda Riley.
And I'm Christy Riley. Welcome to the show, everyone.
We're not wearing our bibs today.
They weren't laundered.
No. We did a quick turnaround. We usually only record on Mondays. Today's Wednesday.
Yeah, we're doing 3 this week, which is a lot for us, y'all. It's a lot of recordings for us, but we're here for it. Very excited about our guest today.
Yeah, I'm so excited.
I met Laurie, I guess in 2017, 2018, right around there. And she is the mayor of a locality here around Columbus named Gahanna, a little town, a little suburb of Columbus. And she's 2 terms running mayor.
So exciting.
We met her before she was mayor. But,
okay.
Yeah, always involved in the city politics. So when we opened up the restaurant in Gahanna, she was somebody that Stan was on a lot of committees with.
Yeah.
And then she decided to run for mayor. We were very excited to support her.
I'm excited to have a guest on who, has run for something here locally. I feel like there's a lot of men in the community that I know that have run, but I'm not as connected to the female leaders in our community. So I'm really excited to learn about her and, maybe politics, maybe not, but just what she, her approach to all of this and her experience so far.
Yeah, we didn't set up any prerequisites. So we're going to let her sort of lead the charge as far as telling her story. But I'll be excited to hear. We do have a decent amount of actual strong political women in Ohio, which is great. So
totally
excited to have her.
Yeah.
Hi, Laurie.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure.
We're so grateful to have you.
Oh, this is a fantastic space.
Thanks.
I love the work that you're doing. This is a lot of fun.
It is better than our tiny room under a blanket scenario, which is how it started.
Kind of fun. Then we explained it.
We've come a long ways.
It was funny. I think anytime you start something new, it's scary. You want to be perfect and you want to have everything that you need. And just beginning is the hardest step to take. And just saying, you know what? We're going to go after it. And we might not have everything we need. It might not be perfect at first, but
you are absolutely right. I was just talking about it's like we need to get in shape. and I keep saying, I need to go. But it's like just taking the first step. Once you start doing it, it's fine.
Yeah.
But that first step can be a doozy.
Totally.
If you need an accountability partner, Amanda Riley.
She's good at that.
She makes all of our workout routines, and she's at the gym every day. She sends a gift in the morning to make sure that we're all coming.
Okay, I do need you.
Yeah, I mean, I can text you every single day.
Opening one of them.
So, Laurie, I met you. Gosh, when did we meet? Probably in 2018.
I prefer not to go think about dates or something. You go ahead.
It's been a while. We've known each other a bit. I love can I tell my husband's story of how he came to know Laurie Jadwin?
Sure.
So we were opening up a restaurant in Gahanna. You guys know that we're restaurateurs. And he had to go to city council. And this is his version, which I love. And to get his, it was something to do with a liquor permit. We were texting one in, I think, and he had to be in front of city council to get it approved. And he's like, and I'm in the back because I'm at the very end of the docket, and I'm on my phone, and like he does, and he's scrolling, and I'm not listening to anyone. He's like, and then suddenly there's a voice in the room. He's like, that commanded everyone's attention. He's like, and I immediately put down my phone. And it was Laurie Jadwin giving her update to City Council from the visitors. Yeah, the visitor bureau. And he's like, and she was he's like, I hadn't paid attention to any of those people until she started talking. And he's like, and she was so deliberate and informative and exacting and all of the things. He's like, she absolutely took command of that room to the point that I set my device down and started paying attention. And I love that story.
I don't even remember that. Thank you for sharing that.
And he's like, and I knew that she was a special person then. And he's like, and then we sat on some committees together, and we did some other projects together, and then eventually she decided to run for mayor. But and I know that you guys have a relationship that's really great that I adore. As far as business and mayor and all the things, but also friends, and it's just a really cool thing the way that came about. And
we butted heads through the,
course,
but that's one of the things I love about our relationship is we can be very honest and have that open conversation, and walk away and hug it out and respect one another at the end of the day.
Right.
But that's why I have tremendous respect for him as a business owner for everything he's accomplished. But I also love the direct approach.
Yeah.
I've been probably criticized for being too direct sometimes, but
why you guys
to communicate that.
Yeah, he is also very direct. Yes, sometimes so fall for sure. Yeah. But take us back a little bit. Like I know you as Mayor Jadwin, but let's go back and talk about Laurie for a little bit and give us a little history on where
you talk about Gahanna. Great, talk about Sure. I grew up in Pittsburgh. I was born and raised in Pittsburgh. And Columbus, as I've come to find, is really like a western suburb of Pittsburgh. I've met a lot of people from Pittsburgh living out here, although I've been more an Ohioan now than a Pittsburgher because when I grew up in Pittsburgh, went to undergrad at Duquesne University, went to law school at the University of Pittsburgh, and came out to Columbus when I interned between my second and third years of law school. And my dad was in public office back in my neck of the woods back in Pennsylvania. And I didn't want anybody to say I got my job because of my dad. Little did I know that everybody gets their jobs because of who they know. But I was my plan was I was going to come to Columbus after, because I interned here, I got an offer from the firm I interned with, and decided, well, I'm going to go out there, prove I can make it on my own, have my Mary Tyler Moore moment, throw my hat in the air, and then come back in a year or two. Then it was actually met my husband studying for the bar exam. So I ended up being in Ohio now since 1987. So, but go back to Pittsburgh. Grew up my only child, didn't have any siblings, but large family in terms of cousins and things. My dad was a police officer, but then he was very involved in our community. He was a school board member, council member, and then was a district magistrate, which would be like a municipal court judge here, and then a state senator. And so kind of grew up in that household, hating it every moment. I swore I would never want to be in public office.
Tell us more about that. Expand on that.
We live by Century 3 Mall because I live in West Mifflin. If anybody ever heard of Kennywood, so Kennywood's in West Mifflin. And we would go to the mall, and my mom would with the three of us, and we would walk, and somebody would stop my dad, and we'd stand there, and then we'd walk another 3 feet, and somebody would stop my dad, and we'd stand there for a while, and then finally my mom and I would go, we'll meet you back here. And we would go do our shopping, and we'd come back, and my dad would still be in the same spot, talking to person number 15.
Right.
And then, but that was before social media as well. So people would call our house at midnight and 1 o'clock in the morning, and just yelling at they were getting evicted and yelling at my dad, and my dad would be like, well, when did you get the eviction notice? Well, 30 days ago. It's like, why are you calling me now? But it was just like I would watch all of those things, and I think, why would anybody want to do that? So it's just funny. You never know where your life's going to take you.
Did you have like an interest that sparked you back then that you thought, like, when I grow up, I'm going to be X, Y, Z?
I always thought I would be a lawyer growing up. Okay. My path was set on I was going to grow up and be an attorney. And yeah, just I don't know why. I just always thought that that's what I would do. And I didn't. Went to law school. It was okay. It's not my personality, though. It's not necessarily, the litigation piece of being a lawyer and, art, being in the courtroom and all of that. I just don't think that I was really ever comfortable with. I did employment law. When I did practice, I practiced employment law for almost 27 years, which is interesting because it's, you deal with the situation. I represented employers, a lot of major companies here in Columbus, in fact. And you get a situation where something hasn't gone right, and then you're defending that position. which is not unlike what I do now. It's kind of interesting. But I practiced law for 27 years, and I actually eventually got tired of always, I said, cleaning up somebody else's mess, so to speak. Not that the clients had never done anything wrong, but as you were always just dealing with that.
So really reactive.
Yeah, right. And employment law is a lot like family law. It's very emotional. Somebody worked for a company, they get fired, and their emotions are very high. And I wanted to be part of a team. I wanted to be part of something that creates something positive, which is how I ended up at Visit Gahanna. We are really just glossing over a lot of this, but that was how I ended up at Visit Gahanna eventually. We talk about the fact that growing up in Pittsburgh in the 70s, I'm a Steelers fan, diehard. So that tends to. We actually had a ribbon cutting yesterday for a business here in Gahanna. They opened their Ohio headquarters, but the company was formed in Pittsburgh, so there was a lot of Pittsburghers that were there for the ribbon cutting. Nice. And there might have been a cheer of "Here we go, Steelers" that broke out.
Oh. I have a lot of friends actually that grew up in Pittsburgh, and it's funny because there's some strong loyalties to local businesses there that I'm like, my friend Brown, like, you've lived here a very long time, but he'll be like, yep, this restaurant, got to go back. So do you have any of those places there that you have fond memories that you want to shout out?
Sure. Well, they're not so small now, but Permanis was, when I was growing up, Permani Brothers was down in the Strip District, which is not what it used to be either. I mean, it's really cool and it's developed, but back when I was in college, for example, the Strip District really opened from like 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. And that was when all the fresh produce and fresh meats and everything would come in. So it would be all the truckers down in that area. And Permani's only opened late at night, and so like you're sitting for finals at 1 a.m, and you go down and you get a Permani sandwich, which has the French fries and coleslaw on the big Italian bread, nothing like that. And now they're a chain, they're in multiple places, but that would be the only time and place you could go get one of those.
Yeah.
But you still got to go back and get Permani Brothers.
Yeah. Definitely heard of that sandwich.
From that spot.
Yeah.
From that spot. Because you're going someplace else, it doesn't count. You have to go down to the Strip District and get
Originally,
there. Exactly.
I love that. So you met your husband in
Same for the bar exam. Yeah, same for the bar exam. And it was at the, I don't know if anybody remembers the Christopher Inn. It was that round hotel that was right across the street from the original Wendy's, which downtown Columbus, which is now gone too. But yeah, we were taking the bar review class, and somebody I had clerked with the summer before knew him from law school, and actually they were teasing him because apparently he was at the back of the room and he had noticed me, and so he jokingly said to a friend of his, "Oh, I'd like to go home with her," and so his friend he passes up a note to my friend, and it happened to be it was like a Thursday or Friday, and I was driving back to Pittsburgh for the weekend. This is me and how naive I was. And so my friend leans over and she says, "Hey, there's this guy in the back of the room. He says he wants to go home with you." And I'm like, "Oh, does he need a ride to Pittsburgh this week?"
right?
I sound like it. I was just very
You were very focused.
Just very focused.
Pass the bar.
That's how we met. Yes. So, but I mean, I went to college on a performing scholarship, little known fact, with a group from Duquesne University that was called the Duquesne University Tambouristans. It's the longest live stage show in the country. It's over 85 years now. But we did Eastern European music and dance, performed all over the country. I performed and sang a solo at Heinz Center down in Pittsburgh, but also Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C. Not many people can do that.
Yeah.
But, you're in this group with all these, beautiful young girls and then young men, and you go, "Man, that's not me." So, it was a good lesson in just attitude and how you perceive yourself and all those things.
Do you have a lot of parental pressure, I guess, to follow the traditional, go to college, get your degree, get a job, then get married, then have a family? Did you feel that pressure, or did you feel more like you were just trying to experience whatever you wanted?
That's a great question. I wouldn't say that it was parental pressure. I mean, was that the expectation? I think yes, but I think that was how you were raised.
Right.
Back then, faith was very important. I grew up in a Catholic family, still is very important to me. And I would say, if anything, the last 5 years of even deepen that for me. But I just think that was back then what you did. Too.
Yeah.
More societal.
It sounds like I'm 185 years old, but more societal expectations.
Yeah. Correct. Yeah. Not necessarily your parents going,
Correct.
when are we
Right.
gonna have?
Yeah, and in fact, because we're having a large conversation on workforce, and I recently spoke to a group of educators, and I said, when I graduated from high school, everybody talked about going to college. You didn't talk about going to the skilled trades because we were kind of the first generations of those families to go to college,
Yeah.
and so that was how we kind of lost the skilled trades. Everybody was then pushed to go to college.
Yeah.
And if you didn't, then you would probably, it was a job you weren't going to talk about. And so there really wasn't another option. But I don't think that was parental pressure. I think that was, again, Christy, your point, societal expectations.
Yeah.
It's always interesting. We always have guests who talk about, like, it seems like you always knew what you wanted to do and you were free to kind of go that path. And it's just a beautiful thing when you can figure that out and you're not feeling like, that feeling pressure. Is that right for you?
To the contrary, I'm very blessed to have had parents that supported me with what I wanted to do. Even moving to Columbus, despite my mother, she always says, "No, I still remember. Why are we doing this? You could just stay right here and build on the land right next to us." I think she's still thinking I'm going to move back home 30-some years later. But
When are you coming back? No, now Mom, I'm just going to bring you to Ohio.
yes, I told her that's the next step. And she's 86, and she's incredibly independent, and I'm very blessed that way too. And I keep telling her, "You can come out here." No, you just need to live your life. I'm fine.
Yeah.
And she has her, she's very independent. That's great.
Yeah. And you became a mom at some point after you got married. But two daughters, right?
We have 2 daughters. Yes, and that was really a turning point. I was practicing law downtown and had our first daughter, Sarah, and cried every day. And I remember when I was pregnant, Jay and I having the conversation, "Are you sure you're going to want to go back to work?" I'm like, "Absolutely. I worked hard to go to law school, and I'm this far away from partnership, and I'm not going to walk away from my career." And then I had her, and it was, I was on leave, and it was time for me to go back to work, and I cried and cried and cried. I was like, "I don't want to go. What was I thinking?" And I cried for 2 years. I would get to the office and I would cry that I left her, and then I would come home at night and I would cry because I felt like I was letting people down at the office. And then I became pregnant with our second child, and then I went through maybe I should quit. I think I'm going to quit. What am I going to do? And decided that I was going to be a stay-at-home mom. And went in under the partners. The partners at the firm were fantastic. And I went in and I said, "I think I'm going to step away. I'm going to stay mom for a little while." And then the next day I went in and said, "I want to stay. I'm not." And this went on for a week. And finally, I remember the managing part of the office called me in after about a week, and he said, "We love you and we want you to stay. You need to make up your mind." Because they didn't know, should we replace her? What should we do? Right. And then I said, "No, I'm going to leave." And I did. And it was, I never once had thought that I regretted that decision. It was the right thing for me. And that is a difficult decision to make for many, many women. Some women don't have that opportunity. I'm very grateful that I had the flexibility, that I was able to do that. It didn't last long, but it was probably about 18 months maybe before somebody I had worked with previously called and said, "Hey, I gave your name to an in-house counsel." And that person called and said, "Would you be interested in handling some cases on a just part-time, case-by-case basis?" Sure, I could do that from home. And that grew into a full-time law practice that lasted almost 20 years. Wow. So I was remote working before it was a thing. Right? Like, that's what everybody during COVID was, I'm remote working. Big deal. I did it for 17 years.
Like that charge, okay.
Yeah. But it was great. But that's, you never know where your path's going to lead. Because it was because of that. So, I was able to be home, get the kids on the school bus. I would work from home. I had my conference calls. If I needed to be at a school for an event, or, to go visit a classroom, I could go do that. If I, made up that I was working at 10 o'clock at night after they went to bed, that's fine. But that's how I then started to get involved in the community. And I started volunteering because I had that flexibility.
Right.
How did you manage that like work life balance and the family? Did you getting back into it again after taking a step back? That can always be difficult.
I've learned some things about myself, and I'm a workaholic. So work life balance has always been a struggle for me. Um, but I don't know. You just do it. You look back as women, we just get things done. I don't know how I did it, but I again I had my hours where I knew I would be in the office. Uh, and if the kids needed me, I would walk away from that as much as I could. And then if I needed to work at midnight, I worked at midnight, to get things done. And as the kids grew up, we would have these. Gosh, I could still picture it. I had, much like you do, I had French door on my den with glass, and I would tell them like, "Mommy's going to be on a conference call now. I need you to be quiet." And as soon as I would do that, so they would know. As soon as the door was shut, they couldn't come in. And I would get on a conference call. We didn't have Teams calls back then. We had virtual, just conference call. And all of a sudden, they'd be standing at the door, holding up a bag of potatoes, just going. They knew I couldn't say anything, and they'd just giggle at me eating the chocolate chip cookies and potato chips because they knew like
This is our time.
yes, this is our time to have free reign. Mom can't do anything right now.
Right now.
So,
Everybody. That's awesome.
I can still picture that. So I'd be throwing markers at the to try to get their attention. It didn't matter. It's fun.
Wow, that's a hefty balance, like and it's not any different than any other entrepreneur, that's taking time off to stay home and then decided to start a business and it starts out small and you're like, I can handle this, and the next thing you know, you're 60 hours in. Like, 70 hours in a week.
Exactly.
This absolutely
Right, and then and traveling. Sometimes I'd have to travel out of town for cases. And again, my husband, he'd pick up the slack. Hey, I need to be in Houston tomorrow. Oh, okay, fine. And and we would balance that. Um, and then involvement in the community. I started a youth choir at church, and I was always directing that. And then I was volunteering for the Blues and Jazz Festival and doing that. And but my family would come along with me and talk about work life balance. I just made them do it. So my husband and both daughters ended up volunteering for years for the Blues and Jazz Festival because I told them, and they became the Aqua team when they got older, and that was something we did as a family.
Yeah.
But it was just giving back to the community and being part of that.
Yeah. Is that something that your girls have, or are they too young still, like chosen to continue with being a part of their community, or are they sort of rebelling like you did?
I think they were rebelling. I think
like that high school, like I don't want any part of that, and you find your way back to it somehow. But
yeah, well, neither one of them live in Columbus. They both live in North Carolina. Married to Gahanna boys too, and actually Sarah and Stephen were dating in high school. And Austin and Stephen, my other son-in-law, they were best friends from the time they were in preschool together.
Oh, nice.
And then Emily and Austin met at Sarah and Stephen's wedding, and so now they all live 10 minutes apart from each other in North Carolina.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's very cool.
It is really cool. Actually, it's nice for the in-laws because we're all like right here in Gahanna, so when the kids come home, they don't have to go very far.
That's awesome.
Then we rotate visits down to see them. When are you going? Okay, we'll go. When are you going?
Yeah.
But that is nice.
That creates a really tight knit group, which is very cool.
Yeah, and especially with Austin and Stephen being friends from the time they were preschool. Those in-laws have known each other for years.
Yeah.
And so it's nice.
Were your girls tight grown up?
At times, it's funny now because
how many years apart?
They're 28 months, so about 2.5 years apart. And I remember once when they were teenagers fighting over the bathroom every morning, slamming the door. And my husband got so mad one day. He said, "You're going to come home one day and there's not going to be a damn bathroom." And sure enough, one day they came out, the door in the bathroom was gone, and the beach towel was hanging there. I remember being
I dare you to slam that.
I know. And that was a lot. Once the door finally went up a few days later, the door never slammed again. So
they're grateful to have the door back.
Tough love.
So do you want to talk about your visit Gahanna experience, like why you got into that, and was that separate from your law practice? Like when did you make that
overlapped? It overlapped. So when I mentioned I started the youth choir at St. Matthew's, so the festival it started with the Blues and Jazz Festival actually, because they visited started. Visitors Bureau was not yet running the festival at that time. There was an organization called Gahanna Events that was running the Blues and Jazz Fest, and it was the third year of the festival, and they were looking to start a community stage. And so they were calling around to people at like the different, hey, you know anybody that's involved in music who might want to help us program this stage? And they called the St. Matthews, which is where I was, and St. Matthews gave them my name. And a member of the festival committee called one night and said, hey, we got your name. Would you maybe be interested in joining the committee? You'd be programming community entertainment. Just come to one meeting. If you don't like it, you don't have to come back. If anybody ever said that to me, run. Because that's the hook, right? So by the end of the night, of course, I was like already thinking of what acts I could contact. And that was how it started. And then eventually, Gahanna Events was rolled into the Visitors Bureau, and by that point, I was serving on the board of Gahanna Events. And then when they combined Gahanna Events and what became Visit Gahanna, I became president of the board of this new organization, and continued to then, at that point, was running the Blues and Jazz Festival, was serving on the board of the Visitors Bureau, and did that for many years. And then the director that we had relocated out of state when her husband took a different job. And I was president of the board. I was running my law practice. I had these 2 kids I was raising with my husband, my volunteer activities at the church, running the festival, and trying to find a new director for Visit Gahanna all at the same time. And that was about an 8-month. And at that time, as a visitor bureau, we were really unique because visitors bureaus did not do events. So we were really kind of looking for a unicorn and a new director, somebody who could lead the tourism and marketing efforts, but then run events as well. And we got through the festival that year with it was me just kind of volunteering my time and 2 part-time folks at Visit Gahanna. And after the festival was over, I remember I went back to one of the other board members and I said, I've got clients I've got to get back to. I've got to walk away. And they said, oh, we should just hire you. And I started thinking about it, and that's when I thought about, it'd be really fun I've been remote working, so this is very isolating. It could be difficult. And I'm kind of tired of just being in my one-man show. I want to be part of a team. I want to do something that's positive and creative and help to make things happen, not just constantly dealing with the aftermath. And so I took the job as director of Visit Gahanna. Was still doing my law practice on the side, but I don't do anything halfway. Everything's 100%, and you can't give 100% twice.
Yeah.
And I ended up shuttering my law practice and focusing on Visit Gahanna. And yeah.
Was that hard?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it was. But again, I look back and it was the right decision for me at the time.
Yeah.
It was because I had clients I worked with for many, many years that I adored, and I really just good people I worked with, and having there, there's some strength around being able to say, oh yeah, I'm Shirley.
Yeah.
That's what you identify with it, right?
Like, it was who I was for 20 years or more, actually.
Something that you feel like conveys like confidence and respect.
Correct. There's a natural respect that goes with that. People go, oh, or like, ugh. Depending on what room you're in. But
either way, I'm well educated. It should be respected.
But it's a practice I had been on for a long time, and it was. But I was equally excited to be heading down this different path, and it was completely different from what I've been doing.
And we talk to a lot of women, and there comes a point where you take the leap to do something completely different. In that moment, what it feels like, and to know this is how I've identified, this is what makes me feel strong or powerful or confident in my identity, but this thing is calling to me, and feeling like you can get through that and that change is really, really, really hard for some people.
You asked me about work-life balance. That was part of the reason, and when I was going through why should I do this, should I not? And I was trying to balance all of those things and working at midnight for the law practice and just always under this pressure to get things done. And I thought, well, if I work here, I could be home at 5:30 every night. And, I had dinner with my family. That was when I learned, oh, it's not the job, it's me.
That was the moment. Whenever I realized.
Yeah. It's only 7:30, 8 o'clock, whatever the same it is now.
Yeah.
But that's a me issue.
That's also good to know and grow through of
It's like a long time to figure that out.
interesting.
We had a guest yesterday that really had a role reversal in her life, and that she was the breadwinner and the career path person, and her husband stayed home with their child. She identifies as a staunch feminist, didn't want to get married, didn't want to have kids, ended up falling in love, ended up having a kid. But they together came up with the plan, and he's like, I'm handy, I want to fix houses, I'll take care of our kids, no problem. You do your career, I'm going to stay home. And so she never experienced that, what I think most women experience as, I'm working, I'm taking care of the kids, I'm failing at all of them, right? Which you sort of admitted to, like feeling that way at times. Did you find any tricks or tools or things that you use to sort of overcome that, or was it just like over time it lessened as the kids got a little older?
I think over time, it lessens. The kids, as the kids grow up, they become more independent. In many ways, it's just. I remember my mother telling me, kids get older, their problems just get bigger, and the problems just become different. So you still have to be there for your kids, especially when they get older, because there's so many pressures on them, especially in today's world. But it just kind of sorts itself out, at least for me. Once you become comfortable in who you are, and I think as women, uh, that comes with as we age too. Talking to somebody about, I think the decade of the 40s is the best one. I remember Jennifer Aniston when she was in Hillary's talking about the same thing. I'm like, that's how I felt. You just become comfortable in your own body with who you are, how you look, how you feel, what you're doing, and where you're headed. And once you get there, it just kind of all falls into place. And it does happen. I think women don't give themselves the flexibility enough to allow themselves to get there. And just take that moment to breathe.
Yeah.
Yeah, compassion for self, right?
Yes.
You get that it's okay that you're doing all of these things.
Yes. And it's okay if you feel like you're failing, because you're not the only one, and recognizing that everybody feels that way. Some just hide it better than others.
Yeah. Right.
We all feel that way.
Yeah.
There's so many different. There's I think two different women, right? The women who have their kids and they're like, I'm never going to stop working, and exactly how you experience it. And then it's like, I can't imagine leaving this child. And those that are like, I love my child, but I still am really aggressively wanting to pursue my career, and that those are okay. Both of those are okay, and just being okay with that and identifying with not feeling bad about yourself if you're one versus the other. One is not better than the other. It just is. And as long as that child is supported and loved in your unit, it doesn't matter. Yeah.
I totally agree with that. And I think it's a lot better today. I think back to when I was going through that mental evaluation when I was pregnant with Emily, and like, do I want to continue to practice law? Do I want to stay home? The expectation was I should continue. I put all this work in. I should still want to be a lawyer, but what will people say? And what was funny was I asked to work part time back then, and the law firm said that would be great. And then because I was the first woman to ever ask for something like that, so I had one day off a week. They cut my pay, and they cut my benefits. I had a computer at home so that I could work from home on my day off, which I did. So I was still working full time. Um, but I was just so happy. I didn't care. Take whatever you want. I was so happy to have one day a week at home where I didn't have to load my baby into a car and drop her off someplace and have that stress. So luckily today, I think women have more flexibility with that, and we are able to be able to work from home and to do all of these things. But I think back to that day, that was almost unheard of. And I know the partners that I worked for then, some who are still practicing, talk about, oh, we remember when we did that, and that was kind of cutting edge. And that was great, and I was happy to do that. And I think back now, if that would happen, would it happen the same way? I'm not sure. But you go through that evaluation of worrying, well, what do people think if I walk away?
Yeah.
What do people think if I don't walk away?
Now,
And it's interesting where we are politically right now at a bigger level around DEI and everything, because people do not understand that diversity, equity, inclusion makes it so we have things like mothers being able to take care of those children while also being comfortable in the workplace, making sure that there's a breastfeeding room available for people. There's so much more that goes into that. I think it's really important to realize that back then it was unheard of for someone to say, here's the flexibility for you in this new phase of life that we want to protect you as the employee.
Yeah. I think I think DEI. Most people don't understand what DEI is. They have a very limited view of what that is, and part of that is the messaging that has come with it. But we actually had uh, somebody from Cardinal Health come into the workplace a couple of years ago, who was their DEI person, and he just gave a phenomenal presentation around it's the age of your the age of your workforce. You look at the folks who work for the city. You have seasonal employees who are 15 and 16, and then you have some folks who've been there for 40 years.
Yeah.
And what is that inclusivity to cover all of the multi-generational people in your workforce?
Right.
Because how you communicate with them is different for this group of people versus this group of people, and how do you make each of them feel welcomed and included as part of your workforce when for example, all the things we just talked about, right? The generational aspects and how they view things and the perspectives are all vastly different. It's DEI is just as much about that as anything else as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
When did you decide, okay, I'm loving doing all of this, I've taken the leap, I'm doing, Visit Gahanna. Now I want to get into politics. What happened there?
I never thought, I'm going to get I still say that. I don't know if I ever get into politics. It was more about seeing an opportunity for the community, and thinking that my community deserved more. So as the director of the Visitor Bureau, part of what I did was I ended up becoming president of the statewide organization for convention visitors bureaus. But we also had a regional organization, Columbus Area Tourism Alliance, and it was all of the CBBs, as we call them. From the Central Ohio area, and we would meet once a month or so, and we would at one point during the meeting we'd go around the room and everybody would talk about what was happening in their communities, and Grove City's getting a new sports complex or whatever it was, and people are going around the room, and I'd get to Gahanna and I'd go, yeah, I got nothing. I had nothing to share because there wasn't anything happening. And that was for many reasons, probably many of which I have a better appreciation for now, but it was just frustrating for me seeing what was happening in all these other communities and knowing that, gosh, they want to deserve so much more. And feeling like I could help to make a difference with that. And so that was really the impetus for it.
Awesome. Like the focus on community and
giving back. And we talked a little bit. I talked a little bit about my dad's background, and always thinking I would never want to be in an elected office or in public office. And I realize now that between what he was doing for his community, and in the meantime, my mom was basically being the caretaker she was the youngest of 7, and as her siblings each became ill, she was taking care of this one in a nursing home, and taking care of this one, and taking care of this one. And I didn't realize until probably the last 5 years that what I was learning all of that time was service above self. And whether you're serving your community, you're serving other people and taking care of other people, it's about giving back and helping other people. That's what it's about for me. So I always brush when I hear politics. I'm not a politician. My dad would say that all the time. He didn't talk to my uncle once for like 6 months because my uncle talked about politician on Easter. Well, one day, what is this problem? But I understand it now because I react the same way when people say, "Oh, you're a politician." No, I'm not. I'm not about the politics. I am about. I say my politics are Gahanna. It's like what is best for my city. That's why I'm here. It's not about anything else.
Have you found that difficult within, a peer group of other politicians? You're not one. Them. Have you felt that like pressure or just like found it hard for you to find the community within your peers, being that is your mindset?
There are certainly, I think there are people who have a like mindset, But then there are very much other people who they have political aspirations. It's all about party politics. It's and it's about the rungs on the ladder. I don't really relate well to that thinking because that's not who I am. I respect it, and that's fine. Again, different types of people, and that's okay. But I don't fit into that category.
What is the quote that you say about having in local politics and having partisanship in local politics?
Yes, I mean, Gahanna by charter is a nonpartisan community. It's supposed to be. But our job, local government's job is the essential services, right? It's public safety, parks and recreation, public service. We're paving your roadways. We're making sure the streetlights work. We're building your playgrounds. Is there a Democrat or Republican road? What are you doing? There's no party politics in any of that. Those are basic essential services, and that's what we're focused on. And it's I think given the political climate that has developed, it's just seeping into everything, and it's unfortunate. I think we all have to remember that at the end of the day, we're there for serving our community. Um, but I guess that's probably always going to be part of it. It probably always has been, and maybe I just haven't been as sensitive to
I think we're the most divided we've ever been as a nation currently. So that messaging at the local level is the only thing we can control. There's no room for that here, right? There's no room for that to really get anything done.
It gets hard sometimes because you get pulled.
I bet.
And it's hard to just stay in your lane.
Yeah.
But I'm in that lane. I'm not moving.
I'm staying in the center.
Staying in the center.
So you got elected during COVID, correct?
I took office in January of 2020.
How was that? What do you how about that experience?
Well, so let me even just give you a little background too, because I think it also is where we were at the time. So Gahanna had just gone through a couple of years that were very difficult. For years, Gahanna had been underfunded. We were at a 1.5% income tax rate, while other communities have been at 2 or 2.5% for years. And we had gotten to the point where we were barely functioning. I mean, the lights on, doors open, and that's it, right? Yes. And that was it. And it became in 2018, 2019, there was an income tax levy that failed by a few dozen votes. And it became very confrontational between the mayor at the time and council. It was difficult to watch the council meetings. It was just very aggressively confrontational. Council was defunding positions. People were leaving. We had a citizen-led initiative and that passed in May of 2019 that actually raised the income tax level. Which basically saved the community, quite frankly, because then we went into COVID. So when I took office in January 2020, there were probably at least 40 positions that were open just at City Hall. I didn't have. There was an interim director of public service. There was no communications and marketing team at all. There was no director of economic development. I'm trying to think of several deputy director positions were open. So I really had to build an entire leadership team all over again. So we were in the process of doing that. It was 70 days from the night of swearing in until the night of Governor DeWine's press conference announcing that everything was going to shut down. So we had to put all the hirings on hold and taking a look at, okay, what are we going to do? And I think about back to those days, and it was actually kind of smooth. It was difficult, but it was smooth.
Yeah.
And I think, well, how did we get through that? And I'm thinking, okay, well, this is my legal experience. I mentioned, litigation. You plan for a defense of a case. You find out new facts. Well, okay, well, now we got to adjust. We have to do this, which helped that thought process and that analysis. But then I was thinking about the Blues and Jazz Festival and all those years of event planning, because you work for 11 months, you plan an event, and the day of the event, a vendor doesn't show up or something, the electric goes out or the forecast that wasn't forecast, the rains come, and you're constantly adjusting and changing it on the fly. Yeah. That's what COVID was. It was constantly adjusting and changing on the fly. Yeah. And I remember at one point giggling and saying, who would have thought? The best thing that would have prepared was the Blues and Jazz. But it was, it was all of those experiences that I had that led to the ability to just manage through that. And our team came together, and I was a new mayor, and although I knew many of the people at the city and had worked with them at Visit Gahanna, I'm now in a different role with them. So the directors and I came to work every day. Everybody went home. But talk about team bonding, and learning how each other works and how each other thinks, and being able to work together as a team. We were really thrust into that. So in a lot of ways, it was a positive.
Yeah,
But it was hard. It was hard for the community.
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah. I'm sure you got a lot of phone calls.
Yeah, like you're worrying about our restaurants, and trying to understand. Because it's not like we had a database of businesses. So just how do you reach out to your business community? Are you open? Are you open? Or are you closed? If you're closed, are you reopening? What do you need? How can we help? We try to create some grant programs through that. Which when we got some of the CARES dollars, the first round that came out, we created a grant program to help some of the local businesses and residents stay in their homes because people were out of work. They could make their rental payments and their mortgage payments. So really happy we were able to do that. But it was interesting. Run for mayor.
It'll be great. You found her, Duke. I'm sure my husband was in on that charge. I was like, Laurie, you should do this.
I remember he was somebody who talked me into it.
We've had so many people say too that like it's interesting where you end up and how everything that you did in your career path ended up being a huge part of what you ended up doing when you is completely different. Is you learn those skills along the way, and you're thinking like, why did I do that, or what made me want to do this thing, and then you're like, wow, this was all divine timing. This all helped me be the best and show up the best way I possibly could because I've had these skills that have prepared me for something I didn't even conceive that could happen.
You never know where the path is going to lead, right? And if I were to give advice to anybody, even to my daughters right now, pay attention to every opportunity, because you might think you're on a straight road and you're going from here to here, but there's all kind of exit ramps that can take you to different places.
Yeah.
And don't be afraid to take an exit ramp, because you don't know where that's going to lead you. Like I said, if you would have told me 10 years ago that I'd be in this position, I would have just laughed at you and said, absolutely not.
You're fine. Nobody wants that. And now it's her too, right? Not just one term, but a second term you decided to take on, and which is beautiful, and we supported you all the whole way, and we're super excited that you came for a second round. We're not going to pressure you about round 3.
I'm still trying to get through round 2.
Yeah, we're barely in round 2, sister. Stop it. Is there like the biggest surprise when you go from being a part of the community, and even being a part of, like, I would say, the runnings of a community, right, to becoming in charge, right? I'm now the mayor of Gahanna. What was the biggest that maybe you could talk about, but the biggest like surprise when you got there, like, wow, I didn't realize this?
That's a great question. Because I've been asked that before, and I never really know quite how to answer it. And I can't say that it was as much of a surprise or more of a realization, because I did work so closely with the city, so and it all felt very natural just from day one. I never. From the time I got there, I never like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to do this. What do we do? That never ever felt that way, which I'm very grateful for. But I remember when I decided I was going to run, and I met one of my girlfriends for lunch, and I said, I'm thinking about doing this. What do you think? And she was quiet for a really long time, and I'm sitting there thinking, oh, yeah, and she finally looked up and she said, I think you would be fantastic, and you would be exactly what the community needs, but I'm worried about your heart. And I said, what do you mean? And she said, people are not nice. And she said, Facebook and the things that people say. And she said, I know your heart. And she said, can you protect your heart around that? And I thought about those words so many times. So I knew it was coming. And it's part of the job. But when people who don't know you and don't know your heart and don't understand or ask the questions as to how or why did you make that decision, or don't read the information that's put out there, and they just attack, and they're in a not nice way. And those do that hurts. And it's funny because I talk in schools a lot, and we talk a lot about social media and how you have to let things like that go. And I've gotten better at it, but I'm not there yet. Somebody said, "Well, those things don't really hurt you, do they?" It was an adult I was talking to. It was a resident one day, and they said, "Well, those things don't really hurt you." I said, "Absolutely. Every single one of those is an arrow to the heart when you read those, because you know how much you care. You know how much the people who work for the city care. You know how hard they work, and they're proud of the work that they do, and they're proud of their community." And that's not to say that people don't have the right to voice a concern or complaint. We want to hear feedback because that's how we know what the community wants. But it's when it crosses that line.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, there's a difference between voicing your concern and an attack.
Correct.
Those are two different things.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. So that was one. And the second one is just, um, we talk about the wheels, how business, how government works so slowly. I came from the private sector. Get it done, get it done. It's a problem. Government doesn't work that fast. But there's a reason for it. I also understand that we are charged with tax spending and investing taxpayer dollars. That is very valuable, and that to being a good steward of those dollars is the utmost priority. So making sure that we have processes in place and that we are handling those dollars with the utmost care and that we're investing them strategically and smartly. So those things require you to take more time. Everything from the bidding process to the selection of vendors. There are Ohio laws. There are Gahanna code rules that we have to follow. And making sure that we're doing all of those things so that we can be transparent and accountable for what we're doing takes a little bit more time.
Yeah. Yeah. Amanda and I would do well in that environment. Well, we're very fast-paced girls.
Yeah, that's one of the hardest lessons I've had. It's like
Things
slow
like that.
down.
Slow down. Yeah, that would be hard for us. Yeah.
I do think everyone can relate really to wanting to use their voice to do good and having to come to the realization that there will always be someone or a group of people who have nothing but really horrible things to say, And whether that is because they don't understand process or they didn't read the information. I mean, how often is that the case? But there are just some people who quite literally have nothing better to do than to tear down the person that's trying to make change.
When you think about it, I mean, I remember I was asked to talk about women in politics one day, and it was 23 maybe, 23, 24, and it was right out. It might have been last year with Taylor Swift, because I used Taylor Swift as my example, and this woman she's an incredible songwriter, a billionaire. She's in the middle of this world tour where people are traveling literally from one side of the globe to the other to go see her.
Yeah.
And when you Google her, the first articles that come up were, "Who's Taylor Swift dating now?" And all of these things about her old boyfriends. And you're thinking, this woman is an incredible entrepreneur. She's built a brand. She has fans that will, travel around the world for her. It has had such incredible success from an award standpoint, from selling records, and what you want to talk about is who she's dating.
Yeah.
So there'd be people, and so you recognize that there's always going to be, that difference. But then you Google Leonardo DiCaprio, totally different story.
Yeah. Right. You just don't get the same information when you Google a man who is a celebrity or in any sort of power. You don't get those articles that pop up looking for the thing to tear them down in their success. And I just find that very interesting that women get it way more. Even podcasting, I remember Christy saying, "Oh, I'm a little nervous about people leaving comments and like what they're going to say." And I was like, well, the good news is if we have trolls, we have fans.
That's how she sees it.
And you're never, especially as a woman, you're never going to get the good first, right? So you people looking for the things to tear you down and just knowing, well, hey, that's another listener, so thank you.
Amanda was like, "I'll respond to all the trolls." I'm like, "Thank God. I don't want any part of any of that." But it was a hesitation on my part, even though we're telling other people's stories, to be in front of people that can have all kinds of opinions and to protect your peace. And you don't get that as mayor, right? Like you don't get that. I sitting here can be like, I want to live a peaceful life. I don't care what you have to say about me, right? Like I want to leave that over there. You can have your opinion. I don't need to be worried about it. But if I choose to air all of these episodes and to put myself out there, I'm sort of inviting myself into that space. And I don't have to be. She's like, I'll handle it. I'm gonna shake that. So we'll see what when that happens. Amanda's so convinced we're gonna be famous. So I'm like, I'm here for it. If that means women are empowered and are telling stories, then great. I'm totally here for that. She still has to handle all the trolls if that happens. Just putting it out there. Yeah, I think that you've handled yourself amazingly in all of the areas that.
Thank you. Thank you for that. There are days when some days I just shut the door and cry for a couple of minutes and then say, okay, let's get back at it.
Yeah.
Because everybody, you have to find your outlets and you have to find your source of support. But
Yeah.
There are some times when I think, oh, I don't know that I don't think I can get through this day, and I always find. And I mentioned, my faith is very important to me, but I always find God sends me a little something right when I need it the most. Whether it's an email from a resident or you run into somebody who says, "Wow, I really appreciate that. You guys did this. Okay, good. We're making a difference. That's good. But, people are noticing some of the works that's being done. So you just have to hold on to those moments.
Yeah.
And and again, I appreciate feedback. Feedback's good. You have to sit through it. What's the feedback? There's what healthy weeds in the garden sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And sometimes those are just need plucked out.
Some you just got to pull and say, okay, moving on.
If people want to volunteer or get involved with Gahanna, how can they do that? Where can they find that information?
Sure. There's actually we have a volunteer portal on the Gahanna.gov website. So our Parks and Recs department has a lot of opportunities for volunteering. And what we're working on right now is trying to work collectively with our nonprofits to create kind of a centralized location where when they have a volunteer need, whether it's Gahanna Residents in Need, which is our food pantry, or Make Gahanna Yours, which is an organization that does kind of beautification projects. Like this Saturday, they have a litter cleanup coming up, looking for volunteers to go up and clean up along the parks and roadways. So we have these organizations that do phenomenal work around the community. So where can we direct people at one time so that they can find those opportunities? So that's in the works. I'm not quite sure where that will land, whether that's on Gahanna.gov or someplace else that we're trying to figure out.
I think that's really smart. I think it's hard for people to navigate there's a lot out there, right? And
Yes.
to navigate all that information to try to find the right spot. If there's a place for people to go and sort of sort through and be like, oh, that feels good to me, that would be really great. Yeah.
And that's part of, we talk too about communicating with folks. There's so much information coming from so many different ways.
Yeah.
People get inundated with it. So how do you grab their attention for the 10 seconds that you have? And you guys, that was, doing your podcast, you want to capture and present a good, interesting topic that's going to grab people's attention and make them want to listen.
Yeah.
How do you rise above all the other noise that's out there too?
Right.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, well, thank you. You
We
guys are
have
amazing.
enjoyed it, and we wish you all the luck in the rest of your term,
Thank you.
and then whatever else you decide after that. I'm not going to put it out there that we hope that you're going to handle, but whatever, maybe.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it.
But we appreciate you coming on. Appreciate all your hard work in our community and the positivity and the smile that you bring every time I see you.
Thank you. And thank you for doing this. Thank you for creating this platform. Women need to lift each other up. And this is an incredible way to do it. So thank you.
Thank you.
Well, remember, if you would like to follow us and all of our guests, please give us a follow on Facebook and Instagram. You can also stream this episode and all of our other episodes on YouTube, audio and video. You can also find our episodes on Spotify, iHeart, and Apple Podcasts.
If this resonated, please share. Love you guys.
Love you.